Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
Before you know it, you're going to click on the Bleacher Report app and your whole device is just going to burst into flame and it's going to yell, fire!
And Brandon Schultz.
When has Russell Wilson ever had a bad stretch of games where you go, who's our backup? We should consider putting in our backup. No, that's never happened.
Go Hawks!
This is episode 162 of the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, a man who described in one word at our class reunion that he did not attend, but the one word that stood out, Adam, was curmudgeon.
Really? I thought it was absent.
No, it was not curmudgeon. It was another C word, cantankerous. They said Adam Emmert has gotten cantankerous in his old age.
Gotten? Okay, number one, I know that's a lie. There can't be, because they implies that there's more than one person that even asked about where the hell I was. And I find that sincerely unlikely.
Josh and Chris.
Okay.
Those are the two that use the exact same word, cantankerous, when describing
cantankerous.
You. Yeah.
I like cantankerous. That has a ring. It also sounds like something you need to treat with a pharmaceutical.
How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. I'm sweltering. I feel like the Wicked Witch of the East. I'm melting. It's not cool here, man. I'm over this 100-degree BS. So to get over it, I'm flying to Georgia tomorrow.
It'll be so much better.
It's gonna be way better.
So much better.
It's gonna be way better, dressed in flannel and Carhartts and work boots and a hard hat for 2 days in the Georgian heat. This is what could go wrong. This is gonna be great.
It'll be great. Well, yeah. In the meantime,
does that sound cantankerous?
I was just looking up the definition of cantankerous, actually.
Okay.
Bad-tempered, argumentative, and uncooperative.
Okay, I take offense to 2 out of 3 of those.
Yeah, you're not uncooperative.
Yeah, and I'm not bad-tempered.
You're definitely argumentative.
Yeah, that I'll take. I'll own that.
Yeah. I think the bad-tempered part comes from your Facebook posts, so.
Well, that's usually because everybody needs to do better.
Yeah. Well, that's where you take it out on. I understand.
Well, there just comes a point, when everybody needs to know, because somehow me telling everybody individually hasn't worked. So, it comes time to, use the megaphone, you know?
Yeah, it always works.
Oh, for sure. I changed lots of minds on Facebook.
Well, the one place that we have to change people's minds, it's right here on the Seahawkers podcast. And this week we have some topics. Not much because it is July, but that's why we have Rivals Month. And this week, as part of Rivals Month, we're bringing on Oscar from the Better Rivals podcast, our 49ers fan to the South, that he's always fun to talk to get his perspective on what's going on with our rival from Northern California.
Absolutely. Oscar was great. You guys are going to enjoy that interview. 49ers had a lot of change this year, so this is a great way to kind of get caught up a little bit on all that. He definitely rattled off some names that I'd never heard of and will probably never think of again. The
consistent message from the Rams and the 49ers is you have two teams that were pretty terrible last year, but they seemingly are on the right track to get better in this division.
Well, you're at the beginning of the bounce back, right? Both of them turned over everything from the top down. And if you're a fan, that's the time to have optimism, right? I'm not going to say that I'll take joy out of watching that optimism just seep out of their fandom by about week 6, week 7. But I'm going to take a lot of joy in that.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
It'll be fun. All right, Adam. Well, we have some other news items coming up, too. We'll get to that after our discussion with Oscar. We're going to be talking Russell Wilson. We'll be talking about Richard Sherman has a preview of what's ahead in the future for the players. Mm-hmm. And we have a little bit of power rankings. It's list season, so why don't we look at some of these rankings?
Gotsta. What are those topics? Where do you want to go first, Brandon? Drive the ship. Where are we headed? Steer the helm.
We're going right to our interview with Oscar from the Better Rivals.
Oh, you're saving all that for the back half?
Yeah, we'll get to it in the back half. This is our feature of the month. Is our discussion.
Well, I'm not saying that this isn't better because it is. I just didn't know the order. We should maybe do some pre-show calculations.
We can wing it.
Yeah.
We're all about
screw it, just
winging
wing it. Hey, you know what we're going to do next?
What?
Let's bring on Oscar.
Let's do it.
Does that sound good?
I like it. You have good ideas. It's time for the 12th Annual Podcast Awards. Yes, the 12th Annual. And we need your vote to help get us in the finals. Go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/vote. There you can register. We're in the People's Choice category at the top, but please go down to the bottom for the Sports and Recreation category and select the Seahawkers Podcast. You only need to vote for us one time this year, and once we're in the finals, it's up to a panel to decide. Please go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/vote and put us in the finals for the 12th Annual Podcast Awards. And this week, as part of Rivals Month on the Seahawkers Podcast, we bring back Oscar from the Better Rivals Podcast, probably the greatest 49ers podcast out there, if that's even something you can argue about. But Oscar, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to having this basically be like the McGregor podcast, like McGregor Mayweather. That they had 3 so far. This is going to be 4, but I'll try and omit the black from the waist down jokes, because that's what McGregor did earlier today, because he's Conor McGregor.
Yeah. Good old Conor McGregor. Yeah, I don't know when that fight's happening, but I don't think it can be soon enough.
August 20 something. Yeah.
It's not even going to be a fight, guys. Conor McGregor is going to get bonked in the face for about 2.5 minutes before he gets knocked out, because he's not a boxer. And I love MMA. And if it were an MMA fight, I'd be like, yes, all about it. Beat up on Mayweather, kick him in the face, and put him in a chokehold. But it's not going to happen. He's going to get outboxed. It'll be quick.
Here's the thing, Oscar. That was my initial thoughts, too. I was like, dude, he's the greatest defensive fighter of all time. There's some of the greatest fighters in the world couldn't lay a hand on him. Like, this is going to be a whitewash. But I also remember when Michael Jordan retired as a Bull and took 2 years off, and then he came back and he wasn't Michael Jordan anymore. Like, he could be Michael Jordan for 5 minutes at a time in a stretch during a game, but he clearly wasn't Michael Jordan anymore. It's been 2 years since Mayweather's fought. He's like in his 40s. What if he got old? What if he got old in there and Conor can just clip him? He can just get one of the, because he moves. He's got a different pace. He moves different than people. He fights from a larger distance. I think I think he's got a fighting chance.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible that you've got. That you have a crazy play or a crazy decision near the 1 yard line of, say, like the Super Bowl that completely changes the outcome of a game. I mean, it's possible.
Right.
It's possible. I don't make the rules, but
yeah.
It can happen.
Speaking of really dumb things that have happened since the start of last season, you guys went out and got a coach that made one of the most bonehead decisions in a Super Bowl. And, an offensive coordinator, if he would have just chose to run the ball in a particular situation, instead he tries to pass, ends up blowing, a 20-some point lead in the Super Bowl? Man.
28-3.
That would be... I have to say, it's pretty embarrassing for the Rams to lose to the 49ers twice in one season, but to go out and get a coach like that's got to be pretty embarrassing.
Oh, man. And I love every second of it. I mean, look, you and the Seahawks, fans are really comfortable with what it looks like to pass when you should have run. You know that sometimes it's always, it doesn't always make it the wrong decision. And I get it, right? Yes, it was the wrong call. Everyone knows it was the wrong call. But I get the logic behind it, right? That's what you've been doing all year. You put the ball in your playmaker's hands, and that was Matt Ryan. And, try to get it to Julio. You try and pass the ball. You stay aggressive. That's why they were up 28-3. You knew that the Patriots were going to come back at some point to within striking distance. So you want to put the game away, and you think you can do that with your passing game. So, I mean, I get the logic. It makes sense. Was it the bad call? Yeah. But, you hope that you dance with the girl who took you there, right? And that was the passing game. And so I get it. It sucks because I wanted to have Super Bowl winning, offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan coming over the 49ers. But, you can't win them all. I'd rather now my hope is that his thirst for winning his first is now going to get channeled all throughout San Francisco so that we can actually be relevant again for F's sake.
So, I mean, didn't Kyle win a ring as like the assistant video runner or something like that in Denver when his dad was head coach there? I mean, he had to be on the staff somewhere around that time period. He might got a ring there, so it might not be a total drop for Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I know a dude who won a national championship with Texas in 2005 because he was a videographer, right? But like, it's a little different. It's a little different.
Integral part of the team. But you do
That's
bring in
right.
Kyle Shanahan, and let's give Kyle Shanahan some credit for taking Matty Mediocre and making him an MVP of the league last year. That's a pretty impressive job. I actually have a fair amount of respect for him as an offensive-minded coach. I think it was a good hire. And I think that definitely makes your team better. I think that with that hiring, he can take somebody like Hoyer and make it a respectable offense for the year instead of the Chip Kelly gimmicky bullshit. Catfish! You guys got to be excited about the Kyle Shanahan hire.
I'm absolutely excited about the hire. I think it was a good move. Granted, that actually was my second choice. I would have loved Josh McDaniels, but once he pulled out, all of a sudden Kyle Shanahan becomes a front runner. And the only thing that was the only thing that was weird about it was the whole John Lynch GM thing. But I think in the short time in which he's been the GM, he's proven that he's a solid communicator. He's proven that he can work with Kyle. And that draft was something else. And even the undrafted free agent class was something else. And that's what really the team needed. Trent Baalke was someone who was media averse. He was basically a hermit who just wanted to watch film and like look at ACL porn. So that's that you need something different. You need something better. And I think we have both of those things in honestly a division that is really, really good. Even with Arizona's fall from grace and even with, the Jared Goff disaster in Los Angeles, I still think this can be a pretty decent division in a year or two. And it'll get back to just, three teams bludgeoning each other.
Well, we have that to look forward to, I guess, because those were the prime years just a couple years back when you looked at the NFC West and you said this is a division that everybody's scared of, and now you have. I look back at the acquisition of John Lynch, and so many of us, when that happened, were like, "What?
Not me, Brandon.
I know
you said it, and the first thing out of my mouth was, "This is a great hire," because he has a good eye for talent. Just like Oscar said, he's a good communicator. And I really think that that's the type of guy you need to bring in. And look, man, just look at this draft, man. He fleeced. Who did he fleece out of their pick early on in the draft? The Bears?
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. I guess, Adam, you had the foresight to know that was coming. But the rest of us, we had to wait until the draft. And you saw some of the moves that Lynch made in that draft. And you go, okay, it looks like the 49ers have something here.
No, absolutely. And you think of the thing that was most exciting for me happened, yes, the draft was awesome. And yes, fleecing the Bears was amazing. I've got a friend who was a Bears fan. I text them, what? Like WUT, what just happened? Because I was, and then to get Reuben Foster at the end of the draft, or at the end of the first round, I should say,
right.
It was another, I think, amazing move, especially since his shoulder seems to have held up. And so I think overall the draft was great, but the thing that was the most exciting was that the team turned over 50% of its roster in like 2.5 months. I mean, the 90-man roster has a whole lot of names that you don't know, a whole lot of undrafted people, a whole lot of, street free agents, a whole lot of regular free agents. There is legit competition at positions that didn't have competition for 2 or 3 years. And that's, I think, the most exciting part. Yes, the draft was great. Yes, you've got a communicator. Yes, you've got someone with a vision. But the vision is right on. This team needs talent. It doesn't have talent. And you shouldn't just stand pat and stare at the roster and be like, well, I think this is the year for Tank Carradine, right? You got to be like, nah, it's been 3 years. He hasn't done anything. 4 years, technically. He hasn't done anything. Bring someone in to push him. Bring in everyone to push him. Let's make this happen. And that's what they did.
I think it's a smart philosophy. It's one he stole from another John, who's been a very successful GM, and John Schneider. The Seahawks turned over their roster big time. 100 transactions in the first year. Yeah.
You did the exact same thing, and you did the same thing with Schneider and Carroll, and you brought in a lot of undrafted free agents. You brought in a lot of rookies, and what you did was you were like, all right, compete. Let's see who wins. And sometimes the undrafted would win, and sometimes they wouldn't. At times, the Seahawks carried the highest undrafted free agent percentage in the league, just simply because they weren't afraid to find talent anywhere. And you'd go to the CFL and you'd find talent, you'd find undrafted free agents, you'd find rookies, and you would just mash them all together. And it worked out because you kept churning the bottom of your roster. And so I think it's a smart move. Absolutely give credit to the Seahawks where credit's due because you figured it out. And now you've got cap problems because you ended up hitting on too many players, and you got to figure that out. But that's the problem you want to have, right? You want to have the problem of trying to figure out who the hell you're going to pay.
All right, let's get this straight, Oscar, because, okay, we've already determined that you've copied our philosophy for building a roster. You've decided to install the zone blocking scheme for your run scheme. You've copied the Pete Carroll defense for your defense now. You've decided that that's the direction you're going to go. When is this going to end?
Well, first of all, let's get one thing straight. Tom Cable learned the zone blocking scheme from the Shanahans. So to be clear, you took the Shanahan zone blocking scheme and tried to implement it, right? So let's go ahead and put that one aside. But then the other thing is, yeah, absolutely, we're taking your defense, and that makes absolute sense. I mean, we've been bouncing players back and forth forever, right? Like Michael Robinson. Anytime we'd cut a player, Michael Robinson, right. Oh look, he's gonna be a Seahawk. Whenever we'd cut a linebacker, oh look, he's gonna be a Seahawk. We've been trading things forever. It makes sense, I think. The defense is definitely absolutely 100% ripped off from Seattle. But you know what? It makes sense. It's a good defensive scheme. And surprisingly, our talent actually matches up quite well. I think Jimmy Ward is going to move to free safety, or we know Jimmy Ward's going to move to free safety. And it's going to be a really solid move for him. You've got Rashard Robinson, who played out of his mind last year as a rookie. We drafted Akella Witherspoon, who is another really, really high P-Spark guy, something else we brought from Seattle. He is also very, very long. He's rangy. And even if he doesn't pan out, you've got Dante Johnson, who's another kind of bigger, longer corner. So we've got the personnel actually to match up. And now we've got, the linebackers are straight. I think Reuben Foster is going to start over Malcolm Smith. You guys are familiar with Malcolm Smith. Mm-hmm. And you've got, the middle linebacker who I hope is going to be healthy. I hope Navarro Bowman's healthy. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you've got the pieces to have a pretty good, solid imitation of the Seattle cover 3.
Well, you have to be excited about that front seven. I mean, I've heard a lot of Niners fans talking about, kind of the mix that you guys have up front there. Talk a little bit about them. And who the hell is your defensive coordinator?
It's Robert Saleh.
Yeah, Robert Saleh. He was like our defensive quality control coach before he went to Jacksonville and started running the defense down there, right?
Oh, of course, that Robert Submala or whatever his name is. How did I not know him?
I don't know.
Yeah, how did you not know him?
You should know all the way down to our quality control guys.
That's exactly it. He was in Seattle, and then he went to Jacksonville with Bradley, and he was there for 3 years as the linebackers coach, and then moved to the 49ers. He was not the first choice for the 49ers when they were looking for a defensive coordinator, but he's the guy that we got, and his story is pretty dope. I think he's the first Arab American coordinator, like upper level coach in the NFL. And so there was actually a really good story done. If you're interested in kind of, the human side of things, I definitely recommend reading that story. But he is someone who does bring that cover 3 scheme. The front seven is going to be pretty good, I think. This is the strength of the team. Of course, we drafted Solomon Thomas. He's actually going to play the big end. He's going to play that 2-gapping 5 technique on the other side. And then you've got DeForest Buckner, who's going to play the 3 technique. And you've got Eric Armstead, who's supposedly going to play the Leo. How or why, I've got no idea. He does not have the athletic profile for the Leo whatsoever. I actually don't think he's going to be a primary pass rusher as a Leo. I think Elvis Dumervil is going to come in on third downs or obvious passing downs, a little bit like what Atlanta did with Robert Mathis and kind of a situational pass rusher. And Dwight Freeney. I think I'm getting my
Colts rushers.
Colts.
Yeah, my old Colts rushers confused. But I think that's the role he will fit. And so I don't think that Eric Armstead's going to be relied on to do a lot of that traditional Leo stuff. But it is a solid front. You've got Earl Mitchell playing, over the nose or the 1 technique. And that's a solid front. And you can, rotate a couple of guys out. You can, have Eric Armstead play the big end. You can move Solomon Thomas inside. I mean, that core 4 players are pretty interchangeable, and you can mix and match and get to some interesting stunts and some interesting pressure packages, assuming it all works out.
Well, let's talk to Forrest Buckner, because it was interesting. The name popped on my radar a couple weeks back when Michael Bennett said he could be a defensive player of the year.
Yep.
Does that line up with what you guys are thinking too, or is Michael Bennett? I mean, he said that Gary Gilliam was going to have a heck of a year this year too, and then he got cut, and you guys picked him up. So I'm questioning his ability to evaluate talent, but is he on point here?
So I do think that DeForest Buckner can be that good. DeForest Buckner played an ungodly amount of snaps last year. He played over 1,000 snaps in his rookie year, which it's just a lot. That's a lot of snaps. If you think on average a defense should play anywhere between 65 and 75 snaps a game, I mean, that's basically never coming out for a whole season. And then you add another like 3 games. It's not like we made the playoffs or anything, right? So that's going to be a lot of wear and tear on a dude. And yet he still had, really good pressure numbers. He had the most number of interior stops for a rookie defensive end or a rookie interior kind of person. And so I think that he definitely can be that good. He's not going to have the flashy, or he might have the flashy stats now that he's playing 3 technique, but he can be that good. I think he can. I don't think Michael Bennett at this point is talking out of his ass. Sometimes he can, but I mean, it's the players, right? That's what they do. It's okay. I actually think Michael Bennett's hilarious and awesome. And I only hate him because he's not on my team.
Right.
But yeah, so I do think that he can be that good. And earlier on our show, the Better Rivals podcast, David and I kind of had a back and forth on who we thought would command, if you did like a fantasy draft and everyone were a free agent for 1 year, which 49er would command the highest free agent contract from any team, like which basically player is the most valuable. And we both thought it would be DeForest Buckner. He is the most valuable player. And he would, I think, command the highest salary in a kind of fantasy Madden draft than any player on the team.
No, absolutely, especially with the position that he plays, and one of the you want that interior talent on the defensive line, and that can come at a premium. Now, speaking of premiums, you guys paid a premium to get Malcolm Smith, and now it sounds like you're telling me 5-year, $26 million contract for Malcolm Smith. He is a former Super Bowl MVP, so I get that. But now you're telling me Reuben Foster's probably going to take his spot and be the starter among the linebackers?
Yeah, honestly, when that signing happened, that was one of the first times where I was like I gave you that kind of puppy like like my ear kind of turned up and I was like, really? Like, was there really someone offering Malcolm Smith like 22 million? That we had to come in and go like, you know what? 26 mil, let's do this. Like I don't think there was. I think that, the money was probably burning a hole in their pocket. They needed to spend money. And he's someone I think that Robert Saleh was familiar with.
Sure.
And so if I were to create a situation in which you overpay this much for a player, I think Robert Saleh says, I know that guy. He's great in the locker room. He can help implement our system. He is going to be good for 2 or 3 years. When, in 3 years, he's probably not going to be on the team, but that's when the core that we're establishing now is going to be really good and the team is going to be flourishing into its own. He can help be the bridge guy on defense that we need, that Brian Hoyer is on offense. And so they said, pay whatever it takes in order to get him. And that's what they did because they had money to burn and they had no idea that Reuben Foster was going to fall in their lap at the end of the first round. And now I think it will be interesting to truly see if John Lynch's and Kyle Shanahan's philosophy really bears out, which is competition everywhere, best man wins. Because I think that Reuben Foster is right now a better weak side linebacker than Malcolm Smith.
I'm still not even sure how Reuben Foster fell all the way to you guys at the draft. And I know part of it
he got mad at someone. Yeah, he got mad at someone and yelled at him. And he smoked a little bit of weed.
He's a linebacker. Like, don't you want dudes that'll get mad at people?
I want somebody that'll punch somebody in the mouth.
Right.
I want winners. Can't win with them. Can't do it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I miss Mike Singletary. Just even seeing him a couple times in the Rams All or Nothing series.
Did you guys see the video where Jeff Fisher got fired and he told everyone, where he was like, sorry guys, we had a great year. And you guys just have to do it without me next year because I just got fired. And it's such a weird, awkward moment. And then at the end, Mike Singletary is the only one who gets up, walks up to him, and gives him a handshake. Yeah. And you're just like, what did I just watch? What are you doing?
It seemed a little awkward. I understand the history between those guys, both playing for the Bears on the linebacking core. So there had to be some kind of relationship there. But how is he the only dude that gets up and gives him a handshake?
Yeah. And to me, it's like, dude, read a social cue. No one else is getting up and giving him a handshake. Like, You just,
because they are men. They are men. Singletary did the right thing. How dare you, Oscar? How dare you? He actually had class. The rest of those guys were just thinking about their own paychecks in that moment. Where Singletary walked up, and had a genuine moment of thanks to the dude that gave him a job. That was class.
You guys want to hire him? He's looking for a job.
No, I mean, that's fine. I'm not sure that he's a coach. I just, but he's a stand-up guy at least.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's funny. It's awkward. I'm never going to get over pants on the ground. Just can't do it.
Yep.
Well, let's move on to the secondary, Oscar, because we're kind of sticking with the theme of the defense. And I wanted to say, for any Seahawks fan that wants, a really in-depth look at the secondary and how the Seahawks, run their secondary and how San Francisco plans to run their scheme, go and listen. I think 2 episodes ago now that you did your scheme month on the secondary. And that was a great show to just kind of get an idea of one, what you guys are going to be doing. And again, there were a lot of comparisons to the Seahawks and the Pete Carroll defense to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun to do the episode. It was episode 196, if you're looking for the specific episode, where we talk about the coverage. And we talk about different coverages, but we definitely talk about single high coverages and what the 49ers transition is going to look like. But it was definitely a little fun to go back and look at the history of Pete Carroll and how he learned really the philosophy that he still employs now from Lou Holtz in 1977 and Monty Kiffin at the University of Arkansas. I mean, it goes way back. And how he then married that with some other concepts in San Francisco in 95 and 96, and why it is that he prefers to play the cover 3 as opposed to 2 deep, which is what Kiffin prefers. So it was definitely a lot of fun to look into that and how it works and why it works. And so, yeah, it definitely is something that is, I think, the wave of what the NFL, of what the future in the NFL is. I think it's a very sound defense. And we already play a lot of press. We actually were one of the teams that played press more than Seattle, Atlanta, and Jacksonville.
That was surprising when you broke out that stat.
Yeah. And so I think it was, so we already have corners that can press and are familiar with the system. But yeah, I mean, Seattle obviously led the league in percentage of single high coverages played last year. Atlanta was second. Jacksonville was third. So, I mean, there's your tree right there.
Right.
And so you definitely have that single high philosophy that's permeating. And being able to bring that safety down in the box does help prevent against the run. You just need that rangy safety to make it work. You need it to work. And so I think Jimmy Ward can definitely do it, but it will be a test. It will be, I think, one of his biggest tests. He's not shied away from tests thus far, and he's been successful despite the rap on him because of that one game against Brandon Marshall. But I do think Jimmy Ward is going to be a really, really good single high safety. And so I think it's going to be a fantastic switch over to the single high defense because I do think it's a situation of scheme marrying with personnel. And I think it'll work. It might take a while for them to be good at it, but I think it'll work.
All right, Oscar. So you just talked about, scheme, personnel, everything coming together. What is your official prediction for wins for the San Francisco 49ers for the upcoming season?
So David, the co-host on the Better Rivals, he sent me a text and he was really, really up on, I think Sam Darnold's the quarterback from USC, who is going to come out, supposedly going to come out. And he's like rated the #1 guy on PFF's, draft board this early. And David's super pumped. He's like, I'm so pumped. We're going to draft this guy. And I was like, yeah, just wait until week 15 or 16 when we play Jacksonville and win some BS meaningless game and then win the final game of the year against Los Angeles, because that's what we do. We end up with like 3 wins on the year and miss out on Darnell. And he's like, my hopes have never been so high and so low in one text message.
Yeah, I think you mean future Jet Sam Darnell.
I think so too. I think so too. Honestly, my legit prediction, I know that a lot of the buzz from the fans is like, oh man, we could get to like 7 wins and maybe even 500. No, absolutely not. I mean, if Kyle Shanahan gets this team to 6 wins, it'll be a solid year 1 turnaround. It will be. Like 6 wins, I think, is the barometer. I'm probably predicting somewhere around 4 or 5, to be honest with you. I think 4 or 5 is where we will end up. For every time you hear someone talk about Brian Hoyer being a good bridge quarterback and Pierre Garçon being, having some tread on the tires, and Carlos Hyde and, Joe Williams and Matt Breida and Kyle Shanahan's system and the defense and Jimmy Ward, just say 2 words: offensive line. our offensive line is absolute crap. It's really, really bad. I mean, when you look at the way that they rated out both as run blockers and as pass blockers, they are near the bottom of the league. If you look at just their pass blocking alone, you didn't have anyone who rated higher than, like, I don't know, the bottom third. Like, the closest one was Staley, and he ranked 42nd out of 66 tackles when it comes to pass blocking. So,
hey,
yes,
we had a starting left tackle. You know where he ranked on that list? 66.
I was going to say, that sounds like an upgrade. Joe Staley is awesome.
Yeah. You're talking about 42. You're like, oh, it's terrible. I'm like, wow, can you imagine? Can you imagine if we had that kind of line, Brandon? Like, just give it, just start making the rings now.
Don't come on our show complaining about offensive line, Oscar.
No,
Give
I don't
me
want
a
to hear
break.
it. Yeah.
You are right. You are right. You do have, a wet tissue as a paper towel that's held up by Tom Cable and his ridiculous hair. I get it. I understand. But you also understand the damage that a leaky offensive line can do. I mean, you look at the way that your quarterback played, and I think Russell Wilson is an annoyingly good quarterback, irrespective of his thoughts on feelings on nanobubbles, and where he decides to put his face in photo shoots with his wife. Despite all these things, he's a damn good quarterback, and he was beat up last year, and he wasn't himself last year, and he didn't have time last year, and now he's dropping weight so that he can run around faster to get away from rushers because he knows that his line's not going to block for him. You know what not having an offensive line can do, and imagine that with a worse quarterback, worse wide receivers, and not a lot of talent around you to succeed, and you end up just kind of knocking everything down a bit. So I do think it'll be somewhere around 4 or 5 wins. I would set the over under somewhere near 5. I think Vegas has it at 4.5, and I think that's about right.
Now, how about?
Agree.
I know we did this when we talked to the Rams. Where in relation to the other teams, with the Rams, are you going to finish ahead or behind the Rams or Cardinals? Where do you think?
I think that's the question of the day, because even if we end up with even if we end up with 1 win, if the Rams have 0 wins, then I still get to poke fun at my family in California and be like, because I've got some uncles and cousins that are Rams fans. But I do think that the top 2 teams in the division are going to be the Seahawks and the Cardinals. I do think the Seahawks are going to win the division again, and the Cardinals are going to come in second. So it really will be a battle of the bottom with LA and the 49ers, and it really depends on Jared Goff. I do think that right now Brian Hoyer is a better quarterback than Jared Goff, but it's year 1. We know that quarterbacks always have a pretty good jolt of progression in their second year. And so this is going to be the year for Jared Goff. He's going to be in a more quarterback-friendly offense with a head coach that actually understands quarterbacks. And that defense in Los Angeles is just bonkers. Aaron Donald is like we predicted, I think, 2 years ago that he was going to kill Carson Palmer, and we were a year early. And I mean, there's on any given play, Aaron Donald can destroy a quarterback, and that defense is pretty solid. So I think that's going to be where the fulcrum for the division is, and I do think that they probably split the series this year, which means that they either end up tied or the 49ers end up last.
I think that the Rams and the Niners duke it out for the second best team in the NFC West. And the Cardinals come in dead last in the division. Dude, they were a 7-win team last year. And tell me where they got better or got younger. Because they did. They lost a bunch of starters on defense. And they lost Calais Campbell, the heartbeat of that whole entire defense, especially the front 7. And Carson Palmer's a year older. He's only had 1 good year out of his 4 in Arizona. Do you think somehow he's going to find the fountain of youth and actually be good? And the second he goes down, what, you're going to bring in Drew Stanton? Okay, then. Like, I just, that team's going to stink next year. We went through their record,
Adam, they upgraded from Drew Stanton to former 49ers quarterback Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, man,
okay, yeah, there you go.
He's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Cardinals are good. I just think the Niners and Rams are that bad is what it comes down to. And even if they're a 6-win team, because I also think that Carson Palmer's probably fallen off that quarterback cliff. Quarterbacks are so weird, man, because and you guys probably know, right? A quarterback is great until he's not. It's not usually a slow, steady decline. Yep. Somewhere around 36 to 39, they just hit a cliff. And they go full Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
And I mean, you think of Peyton Manning, he was breaking records And then the next year it was like, I'm sorry, who are you? You're like a facsimile of yourself.
I've heard
that
a
was
few
just in
Hall of
1 year.
Famers talk about that, and they all go back to one thing. It's when they don't want to be hit anymore. Like that's exactly
that might be
like
it.
Mike Vick came back and played great for the Eagles, and then all of a sudden you could tell he did not want to get hit. Last year, Peyton Manning did not want to get hit. Like, I mean, you just go down the list. Like all of the great players. Brett Favre talked about it. He was like, he was awesome with the Vikings his second to last year, and then he's like, I didn't want to get hit anymore. And that last year, he was atrocious. Tom Brady still doesn't mind getting freaking just blowed up. He don't care still. So that's why he's still good. And Carson Palmer does not want to get hit anymore.
Yeah, and that might be. I think that seems and feels like a contributing factor, and I do think Carson Palmer is probably at that cliff. But if you do look, I mean, their defense, despite all the troubles on their offense, their defense last year finished third in DVOA when it came to the success of their defense, which means that their defense is still really good overall. And I mean, I think
they were
that's
14th in scoring. 14th.
Yeah, and 14th in scoring is still way better than both the Rams and the Niners. And when you look at the offensive problems the Rams and the Niners have, I think that I don't think that I don't think the Cardinals are going to be some amazing, awesome, 9-win team that are going to press the Seahawks for the division. I just think that they're in the middle. And I think that the Rams and the Niners are just overall worse teams.
Okay, so what's your thoughts then on the Seahawks? Like, let's bring in the rivals' thoughts on what the future looks like for the Seahawks coming up this year.
Yeah, so I do think the Seahawks are probably going to hover somewhere around that 10-win area again. What's going to be interesting is going to see how, faith in Tom Cable. This is basically bordering on like Dom Capers in Green Bay. Like, it's like, hey, let's let everyone run all over you. Okay, you keep your job. It's like, I don't know how or why Carroll feels obliged. Like, Cable must have some picture on his phone of Pete Carroll doing something. Like, this is the only option at this point. I do think it'll be interesting to see how Earl Thomas comes back from injury, because that was a big deal. I mean, your defense basically forgot how to play when Earl Thomas went out of the lineup. And that makes sense. I mean, he is the integral part of that defense. He makes that whole thing go, which is why Richard Sherman was even on the trading block this year, because, the part of the philosophy of that defense is, you can plug and play cornerbacks because the safety is what makes it go. So I think it'll be interesting how the locker room stuff shakes out. I think it'll be interesting how Earl Thomas comes back. And I do think that you risk having your quarterback get a little bit of the David Carr syndrome. He's going to start seeing phantoms. And if he does, that's where you start to see a little bit of that nosedive. But I still think, you're a 10-win team somewhere around there, win the division. And once you get in the playoffs, man, it's a one-game sample. Anything can happen. I mean, you remember the beast mode game against New Orleans. Anything can happen. Yeah. And I think that because of the tenure, because of the experience of the Seahawks, they're always a danger to do some things in the playoffs. So I do think you win the division. I do think it's somewhere near 10 wins, maybe 11. And because you don't have to worry about the Rams defense anymore. The different scheme, I think, and the different coaches, they won't have your number as easily. And
I hope you're right on this.
I think that it's still going to be a positive outlook. Things are looking up for you.
Easy to say from a team that beat the Rams twice last year.
Hey, man, matchups make fights. And for whatever reason, having, 2 or 3 dudes on the interior that could destroy even competent guards, now going up against people that have no business being reserves on the Cleveland Browns. And that's what you're going to get. You're going to get your offense shut down. The problem is the rest of the division doesn't have interior offensive linemen like that, DeForest Buckner notwithstanding. And he's not in the stratosphere that Aaron Donald is. Nowhere near it, not yet. So I do think that's your kryptonite. That's your kryptonite. And the Rams had it. I just don't know if this new staff is going to be able to employ it in the same way to net some wins.
All right, Oscar. Well, we got your thoughts on the Seahawks. I also want to get your thoughts on Eddie Lacy, because
China food.
We have Adam and I have a bet going for this upcoming season. I put this is an over-under for 600 yards. This isn't just rushing. It's rushing and receiving. Eddie Lacy, 600 yards, all
Only
purpose.
because you whined forever about making it all-purpose yards. because he had no confidence in your bet.
Under?
I took the under, Oscar. This is a disaster. Like this is gonna be easy. This is easy money, man.
Man,
where do you come out?
I don't think. Here's the battle that's going on in my head. Eddie Lacy can be good and has shown some promise, especially given the style that Seattle likes to play. When you think of someone who was miscast in Buffalo, especially schematically, he comes over to a team as a reclamation project, and he grows into the beast mode that we know and love now. I don't think we're going to see that kind of Eddie Lacy turnaround this year, but I could see him flourishing in this kind of a system. And especially if he keeps his weight down, he does have the athleticism to move. Now, I don't know that. I think 600 yards, honestly, is just too low if you're talking about all purpose. But at the same time, I don't know who else is going to take his carries. Like, to me, it's a matter of opportunity.
You think he's beating out Thomas Rawls for the starting position?
Okay, Thomas Rawls last year, he was everyone's fantasy darling. How well did he play? What did he do last year?
He played awesome if he didn't play the freaking Rams where they broke his leg. Mm-hmm. Like, if he can just stay away from some fluky injuries, he has been an extremely productive back. And if you talk about the best beast mode impersonation on that team, he's far more beast mode than Eddie Lacy ever dreamed of being. The China Food Chubster is every bit as injury prone as Thomas Rawls on top of all of that.
Yeah, I do think that it's going to be. I think it's a matter of opportunity, and everyone thought that Christine Michael was going to be great, and he ended up on the scrap heap, and so it's going to be really the whim of Pete Carroll. 600 all-purpose yards. That's actually a pretty good over/under. Oh man, if Thomas Rawls does come back from injury, I could see that under happening easily, but. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. That's actually a pretty good line. That's a pretty good line.
See,
I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? Take the under because I have hope for Thomas Rawls only because I drafted him last year and he did nothing. So I'm going to try and retroactively be right and say that Eddie Lacy doesn't do it. But that'll be interesting.
So, Oscar, now I do know who to blame for Thomas Rawls' injury last year. Yeah. A 49er fan drafted our starting running back for his fantasy team. Of course he was going to get busted up. You reverse jinxed Thomas Rawls. You know you did.
Oh, man. I have not drafted a 49er on my team except for I think I drafted Colin Kaepernick in 2013. And even then I was like, I never started him. I had the heebie-jeebies. I think I drafted him in like the 8th or 9th round or whatever. I pretty much stay away from 49ers and exclusively go everywhere else. And so if this is, we'll test this curse on one of my fantasy teams. And I usually carry like 4 or 5 on one of them. I'm drafting all Seahawks. I'm drafting all Seahawks. I'm going to Russell Wilson's my quarterback. Thomas Rawls is my running back. I'm going to go Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett. I'll even draft, the ginger himself, Jimmy Graham. And let's make this happen. Let's see what happens. Let's see if this curse extends.
I'm so about to hang up on you right now, Oscar. Seriously though, people should go check out episode 196. It's Jimmy Ward, Pete Carroll, and the single high coverages, the second to latest in the scheme month for Better Rivals podcast.
And they're awesome at it. Like this will be a schematic breakdown that Brennan and I could not do. Like right. They really do an awesome job with it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It's a lot of fun to do that. David definitely puts in a lot of work to help out with this kind of stuff because he watches a lot more football than I do. So he helps me a lot with this stuff too. And it's a lot of fun to put together some of this stuff because, football, it's good to talk smack with you guys and you guys are awesome. But football is really fun to just figure out the mechanics of what is kinesthetic chess effectively. And so it's a ton of fun to figure out why it works and how it works.
Absolutely. And definitely the kind of depth that you're not going to find the kind of depth that really anywhere else that I've been able to find with you guys when you do your scheme month. So worth checking out. And I can't believe we've made it this far into the interview and I haven't given you a boomer sooner, Oscar.
Oh, God, I forget. That's right. Oklahoma.
I know it's disgusting,
God.
Right?
We couldn't be more different
really
in our fandoms, me and Oscar, with him being UT and Niners and
yeah.
Sooner Seahawks.
Wow, yeah, I'm surprised you guys can talk to each other.
I know.
Yeah. I know. Hey, either one of you guys know what time it is?
It's about 7:49.
And OU still sucks.
I'll give you my upside down hook 'em horns. How about that?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be trash talk?
I think those are like the versions. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
right.
what. So in Texas, basically, that's you ask someone what time it is, and they it's 8:50 or 7:50 or whatever. You go, NOU still sucks, and that's just the retort to everything. It's pretty hilarious.
And on the OU campus, you give upside down hook 'em horns like as gang signs to your fellow Oklahomans.
Oklahoma gangs, you got to look out for them.
Oh, we're educating Adam.
Mid-America's side.
Right.
What is that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. We're rivals on both college and pro sports. But see, look, even we can be cordial.
I know.
There's hope yet. There's hope yet.
It just goes to show you.
I can't wait till one of you decide to shank the other, though. It's happening at some point. We do this enough years, like it's going to happen.
All right, Oscar. Well, really wanted to thank you for coming on once again and helping us break down what's gone on for the 49ers in the offseason. We got, our home opener, the Seahawks against the 49ers up at the Clink. So we'll be seeing you guys early on this year.
Absolutely. That way, hopefully you don't have too much film on us. But yeah, it'll be fun. Thanks again for having me on, guys. It's always a pleasure to come on, and I'm sure I'll see you on the Twitters. For those of you that want to take a look at the Ski Month podcast, you can definitely find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, or whatever your podcast listening area is of choice. Just search for Better Rivals, and it's episode 196.
Well, thanks again, Oscar, and we'll be seeing you in a few weeks.
Awesome, y'all. Thanks so much.
Hey, I'm Russell Wilson, and I throw a sexy deep ball.
Well, Adam, it is that time of the year where you really want to gear up. If folks want to help out the show while they're gearing up for the upcoming season, they can go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/fan. That'll take you right to the Fanatics website, and any gear that you buy there, the Seahawkers podcast will get a little kickback from what you purchase, whether it's a jersey, a hat, whatever your choice is for gearing up for the season. It's there at Fanatics.
Absolutely. Check it out. You're going to get some awesome Seahawks gear. I'm in market for a new hat. I got to get a new hat this year. My replacement hat last year, just didn't feel right, man. It just didn't feel right. Yeah. So I got to find something a little different.
I am a one hat per year. That's about how long they last for me, where the blue starts turning orange in spots. It's not pretty. You gotta, one hat a year. I mean, $30.
Yeah. It's your primary hat for the year.
I know. You have to make the investment for the year. It works out to pennies a day. I understand.
Yeah. That Grizzly hat you have on today, though, that's pretty sexy.
Oh,
way better than a Boomer Sooner hat.
Yeah. Do you see the little bit? There's some glitter over on one of these sides that I think my girls.
Wait. Oh, from the kids?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. All right. It wasn't like it wasn't produced that way.
No.
Okay. All right. If you button a hat as a grown man with glitter on it, it was from the kids.
It was from the kids, and
Have any late nights lately, Brandon?
They didn't get it on the Seahawks hat though. But yes, I am also in the market for a new University of Montana hat, and you can go, whether it's a Seahawks hat or your favorite college team, you can go to Seahawkerspodcast.com/fan, and like I said, our show gets a little bit of kickback.
Sweet, yeah.
Thanks again to Oscar from Better Rivals, coming on once again, breaking down his look at the 49ers and also giving us a little perspective on what he thinks of the Seahawks coming up this season. So, he's one of the guys that I respect most of all out of our rivals. So him saying that the Seahawks easily had the division, I'm going to go ahead and accept that.
The funny thing is you've watched the competition kind of ebb and flow, right? Like throughout the last few years. And there's just been one constant, and that's your beloved Seahawks, folks. I mean, that's what it looks like to stay on top, rather than just like cobbling it together for a year or two and then just letting it implode. And that's what you've seen the other teams in the division do.
I almost heard you say consonant, but I'm almost positive you meant constant.
Yes, constant. Yeah.
Okay, good.
If I say consonant, then that's talking about English, and that's way out of my league.
Yeah, just want to make sure.
Okay.
Just in case anybody else heard it too.
Yeah. Well, you know what else is a constant in the league this time of year, Brandon?
Russell Wilson being on lists.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's tackle a quick list here that I saw on the Ringer. Most clutch QBs of all time, basically, is the list. I'm not going to go into a long-winded thing about this, but our quarterback, man, That's a quarterback, and he's number 14 all time. And
That's
he's
pretty
only
clutchy.
played for a few years. When you say that and you think about that, I mean, ranked ahead of the likes of like Earl Morrall and Whitey Tittle and Warren Moon even. Your quarterback is on that list. How do you feel about that, Brandon?
He deserves to be on there. He's shown that he can be the kind of guy that can bring you back. You don't have to look any farther than the NFC Championship in 2014. What other quarterback comes back from being down and after giving up, 4 interceptions and still being able to power your team back through that? That was as great as the comeback was for Tom Brady against the Falcons. Tom Brady didn't throw 4 picks going into the into the final quarter of that game.
Well, Russell Wilson technically didn't throw 4 picks in that game either. Jermaine Kearse basically caused 2.
He did, yeah. He was responsible for a couple of them.
Yeah. Well, then he caught the game winner. So
I know that's one of my favorite comeback stories ever. Him being a part. My brother forwarded me like a 5-minute video of that game, and I watched it and relived it, and it was glorious.
It is glorious.
But yes, being number 14 on that list. Okay, who are the top 3?
Top 3. Let me scroll through. Montana was one of them.
I would have said Montana, Brady. Was Brett Favre that great of a comeback guy?
Favre had his comebacks, and then he lost a lot of games.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know how high.
But he was in the
there.
top 10. Favre was. So topper, number 1, Brady. Number 2, Elway. Number 3, Joe Montana.
Okay.
I think they got Elway and Montana wrong. Johnny Unitas is 4. Peyton's 5. I don't like that at all.
He's had some good comebacks.
Brett Favre was 6. How is Manning over Staubach at 7? No. Captain Comeback himself. No, thank you. Or Ken Stabler at 8. But one thing about Russell Wilson at 14, one of the things they mentioned is that a lot of the more memorable finishes for Russell Wilson's are some of them that he didn't quite complete. Like they were still miraculous. Like, I mean, they brought up the first Atlanta game in 2012, and
right.
And then obviously the play that shall not be spoken about,
right?
And just a lot of those big games that he dang near led miraculous finishes to that didn't quite buff out. So not only has he won some amazingly clutch games, but he's come within a breath of in things that really technically not his fault. Losing some of those really close ones. So yeah, I mean, he deserves to be on the list, and he's only going to raise his ranking on this list as time goes on.
As long as you tell me that he's ahead of Andrew Luck, I think I'm okay.
Andrew Luck didn't even make the list, and I think that brings us to our second list.
Yeah, because Pro Football Focus had a redraft of just everybody in the league. Where would you start your team?
An expansion draft, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Who would you start your team with if you were drafting right now? And everybody's the same ages. So, a guy like Tom Brady may not get drafted high because he's kind of toward the end of his career. Obviously, you're going quarterback first. And when I think about this for me, I want a guy who, one, is going to be with the team for a few years. Mm-hmm. I want a guy that has some playoff experience, preferably has won a Super Bowl, which that narrows the list quite a bit. But you want a guy with playoff experience. So number 1 on the list to me was easy. Aaron Rodgers, pick number 1. That seems to make sense because there you have a guy who's won a chip. He's shown that he can be a great quarterback year after year, and he still has some years left.
Absolutely. I get it. I think another factor that I'd be thinking about if I was starting a team and I was looking for my quarterback, odds are you're not going to have great offensive line play. So you're going to need a guy who can move around and make plays, and Aaron Rodgers is absolutely that guy, right?
Sure.
So he fits that mold.
He fits that too.
You need a playmaker to kind of elevate everybody else around you. So yeah, I understand Aaron Rodgers completely, but then the number 2 pick came along.
Number 2 pick comes along, Andrew Luck.
What the
catfish?
Yeah, rhymes with luck.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get this for the life of me.
Well, I see this, and I don't know if it was one guy if they had a group of guys around the table. There's people out there that are they're still stuck on Andrew Luck being this number 1 pick that he was a few years back. And yes, he'd probably be one of the top 5 or 6 guys that you would think of but he's not the guy who's really gotten it done in the playoffs. He's made it to an AFC championship, and he got blown out. So he's not the type of guy where I want a guy.
I take Cam Newton over him.
I take Cam Newton over him. I'd probably take Roethlisberger. Well, no, I don't think he's gotten a little too old.
Yeah, he's year to year. I take Marcus Mariota over him at this point.
Over Andrew Luck?
Yeah.
That's where it starts to get iffy for me.
Yeah, that's iffy. I'll give you that. That's iffy.
Because Mariota, again, he hasn't shown that he can win in the playoffs. He hasn't been to the playoffs. Jameis Winston, another one of those guys who, really good quarterback, but you don't know if he's a guy that you can count on yet.
Right. Yeah. So there's not a track record there. So, okay, I guess Luck has been in some big games. Trying to think of some of the other young quarterbacks that have been in big games that have kind of come through, and I really can't think of another except for our quarterback, Brandon.
I know. And he was at number 3.
Right.
Number 3 at number 3. I kind of like the numerology.
I get it, but there is no way in hell that you take Andrew Luck over Russell Wilson at this point in their careers. You cannot. Those careers aren't even comparable. They're not even comparable. Andrew Luck has become a turnover machine. And I'm sorry, man. Like these two players, it's not even close. The best quarterback in the 2012 draft is Russell Wilson. It's not RG3. It's not Andrew Luck. It's none of those other. It's not Ryan Tannehill. It's easily Russell Wilson.
Well, you brought up the offensive line as part of your argument, and I think that's where a lot of this hinges around. If you put Andrew Luck behind the Cowboys offensive line or the Raiders offensive line, he probably, if you put him behind the Raiders offensive line, he would probably be as good as Carr, right?
Wouldn't Russell Wilson as well?
Well, sure.
He's one of the highest rated passers when he can actually have time. He's the guy with the least amount of time in the league. He's the dude that gets pressured the most, and he still puts up. He is the best pressure quarterback in all of football. So if you give him no pressure, like the few times that he gets pressure, he still makes magic. Dude, that's unstoppable.
That's why he would not be he just wouldn't be behind Andrew Luck on any list that I come up with.
There's still heightists out there, man. There's still heightists out there. They still like that big, tall, white quarterback, looks the part. And I like Andrew Luck fine, but Russell Wilson is hands down the better quarterback. He's the better leader. He's more clutch. He can improvise better, and he's definitely a better decision maker with the football. Andrew Luck is a turnover machine. And look, and don't tell me he doesn't have any weapons. He has weapons on that team.
Oh, absolutely. T.Y. Hilton. I mean, dude's a stud.
Yeah, he's had some good tight ends along the way. He had Reggie Wayne early in his career.
Sure.
He's had talent around him.
I guess, to me, put Andrew Luck up against Cam Newton. Both number 1 picks, kind of equal in size.
Equal in their measurables at the combine. They were actually really close.
Right. And I would take a guy like Cam Newton over Andrew Luck because, one, he's had the playoff experience. Another, you really got to like the durability of Cam Newton, being able to run inside. You don't see any other quarterback do what he does in terms of running up the middle.
Yeah. And Andrew Luck's a tough hombre. Don't get me wrong.
He's tough. It's just you don't see him. He doesn't do.
He's missing more games.
I would think so. Well, and he's had his health issues, whereas Cam, I know he's gonna, he's got a shoulder issue he's working through too. So,
well, look, and Russell Wilson. I mean, you watched him last year get injured and still tough through and still play.
All these guys are getting injured
at a high level, but he never missed a practice. He never missed a practice.
Yeah.
I'm talking about practice. So, look, this is super easy to me. I think Russell Wilson got jobbed on this list. I think Andrew Luck has a lot to prove yet before you can even start to begin to think that he's a better quarterback than Russell Wilson.
Who's the first non-quarterback that you'd take?
Non-quarterback. That's a good question. It's got to be either a dynamic running back or real J.J. Watt.
Yeah, I'd take Aaron Donald, but similar thoughts.
Yeah, with Watt's back injury this last year, I mean, that does get scary. You might have the edge there with Donald. You could convince me otherwise.
Or you go Von Miller.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's a legitimate argument there. I mean, he definitely is a game wrecker. He's somebody that changes an entire defense, and Von Miller would be a pretty solid pick.
It seems like
you brought up some good ones. You brought up some good ones there. But yeah, definitely, if you're not going to choose a quarterback, you got to choose somebody that takes down the quarterback, right? I mean, that's basically the logic there.
Or like you said, running back, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, one of those types of guys. I could see having just...
dependent on the pieces around them a little more, though.
It is dependent, and it's also... running back's becoming one of those positions where it's not as
plug
critical.
And play. Yeah. I almost thought free safety. I mean, you think about the importance of, say, somebody like Earl Thomas.
And they're hard to come by.
And they are. They're rare. So, that's maybe another. But, yeah, I think you go with a stud D lineman, and I think you put up the best three options right there. So there's your ranking right there. Try to rank them 1, 2, and 3 between Donald Miller and JJ. Probably this year because of JJ's injuries, third out of those three. And I think you go Donald second and Miller 1.
And Miller just because he has that run stopping ability and he's really good off the edge. But yeah, it's a really tough. It's really tough for me to pick 1 and 2 between him and Donald.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And nobody knows more about chickens than Von Miller, and that tips the scales right there in his favor.
There you go.
He's an amazing chicken farmer.
Is he?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he majored in college, man. Like he knows all about poultry management, apparently. He has a huge chicken farm.
That could come in very handy.
Heck yeah, man. Chicken's great. Especially if you're making your own like him. That's why he's so fast. He makes his own lean protein.
There you go. All right, man. Well, what do you say we get to the second half of the show? I still want to talk Richard Sherman and his thoughts on the future of the NFL. And also, Adam, coming up, we have, I know we've all probably been dumped at one point in our life. And Adam, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but we've been dumped.
We've been dumped?
We've been dumped. And we'll talk about that. And then there were 2 things I regret saying in the second half of last week's show, and we're going to get to that too.
Okay. Wow. There's a lot of downers here, man. I hope it's going to be okay. Is July getting to you? Are you okay, buddy?
We'll talk about it. We'll talk.
Okay. All right.
All right. Getting into the second half of the show. If you haven't checked it out already and you want to get in with one of the Seahawkers chapters, go to Seahawkers.org. Check out the chapters they have there. Adam, I teased it before the break. Richard Sherman, his thoughts on the future of the league. It's interesting that we'd be talking about strike, about 4 years out from the players renegotiating their current
it's not
agreement.
interesting because this happens every year. This happens every year this time of year, and I'll tell you exactly why.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's NBA free agency. And every time the NBA free agency rolls around, you see guys like Kelly Olynyk get something like $25 million from the Heat. Like a guy that has no business getting paid $25 million to do anything athletic. And I love the guy. I'm a Celtics fan. But like the salaries are very large for even the role players in the NBA. And so every time those numbers start going out, you hear the football players start to bark about how much they make, considering the extra toil that they put on their body and the extra dangers that they, put themselves through.
Yeah, there's a difference in the number of games per season. I understand that, but football infinitely more physical. Yeah. And they are undervalued in comparison to baseball players and basketball players, no doubt about it.
Kind of. Look, here's the thing. The one thing that I think you could really point at is the fact that there is not guaranteed contracts in the NFL and there are guaranteed contracts in the NBA and MLB. So I think that's one legitimate gripe. But I think the biggest misnomer for all of these NFL players that think they're going to try to chase NBA type salaries for the entire league, you're out of your mind. You're chasing fool's gold. It'll never happen. And the whole reason is it's just simply a numbers game. You have a 53-man roster in football and you have a 16-man roster in basketball.
Right.
It's quite simply that simple. I mean, it's just never going to happen. So you got Richard Sherman coming out, and he's got a plan to get this fool's gold.
I think he has a point, though. for the NFL to even get close to the point that they'd like to get to, he's saying that the players have to be willing to go into the negotiations, willing to strike to get the guaranteed contracts. And I have to think that he's right, just because based on the leverage that the owners have, that's exactly what the players would have to do. And really, whether or not they do end up having to strike 4 years out, this is the perfect time to say, well, yeah, that's what we got to do, because what does it matter right now? At least you're posturing and putting it out there as though it is an option. I can see why the players would do that.
Kind of. Look, this is one of the places where I can see where the money has made Richard Sherman lose touch with the reality a little bit, because the NFL is very much a league of haves and have-nots. And he's one of the guys that's one of the haves. He gets paid big money, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's easy for him to say, yeah, go on and strike, right, because he's got the money in the bank.
Ask somebody like Troy Maine Pope, who's just hanging on to rosters everywhere he goes, to go on strike.
Yeah. No, it's not happening. Or any of the dudes on the practice squads that are bouncing on and off the practice squad throughout the season.
Yeah, anybody who's on their rookie contract, man. Like Justin Sr., the 6th-round pick today. You go on strike, buddy.
Right. Come on, I'm ready to start playing so I can get paid.
You know what? If he really wants to put his money where his mouth is and thinks that this is the way to go, so it will increase the salaries for those guys on the bottom end of the roster, then you help to subsidize them with your huge contract money that you've got set aside and your big endorsement money that you have set aside. You help subsidize their lives for the year and make it so that they can actually still survive, if you're serious about it. But I'm going to go out on a limb, Brandon, and I don't think that all the guys making the big contracts in this league are ready to do that quite yet.
You don't think that they'd be willing to set aside, I don't know, 10, 15% for the top earners? If you took the top 20% of NFL earners and asked them to say, hey, put aside 15 to 20% of your income into a kitty for our strike fund.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't think they'd be willing to do that?
What did you just say? What would Mike Bennett do?
Yeah.
Like, it just ain't happening. So yeah, for Richard to bring up, we're going to have to strike, it's just ridiculous. It's an empty threat. And I guess he has to say something. It's July.
That would at least show the owners, though, to even have like that kind of fund started. That would at least show the owners that you're some kind of serious.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is there's a lot of guys with dreams to play in the league. And there were scabs last time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's the hard part as a fan, because as a fan, I tend to side more with the players because, millionaire players versus billionaire owners. Right. I'll side with the little guys, even though, these guys are making.
Especially since they're the ones putting their bodies on the line.
Right.
And their health.
Their body. Yeah, exactly. And so I tend to side with the players. But then when it comes to missing games and the owners deciding, oh, well, we already have your season ticket deposits, so we're just going to go ahead and put some other players out on the field. And since you already paid us, we don't need any more money. You have your tickets, and you can go watch these other guys that we're putting out on the field because, we owe it to you as fans to at least put a product on the field, right? No, yeah, I'm not into that at all.
Well, so you'd rather there just be no games, you just ate that money for your season tickets, and at least have B-level football to watch?
Well, now the way that it works, they would not be able to they wouldn't be able to keep our money.
Are you sure about that?
Oh, I'm positive based on the accounting rules.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll take your.
If you pay for a game, they have to produce a game.
Oh, is that really the law of the land?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard to have sympathy for the owners when you see that every single team in the league, except for the 2 LA teams, will make $55 million a piece off of the team's moves. To LA, they're doing okay.
Yeah, well, I think and I heard a good point about this on the radio is, does Paul Allen really need that money, or do you think he's going to invest that back into the fans and the experience on game day? And I would have to think that ends up being good for Seahawks fans.
Yeah, maybe 30 million of it.
Yeah, if it's, the Wi-Fi upgrades around the stadium, that sort of thing, or I don't know, whatever it does to putting in more seats around the stadium.
Yeah. Hard to say. I don't know. But that's the whole thing. Everybody gets mad at people who are rich, and because they don't just give away all their money, and everybody's
they tend to be smart about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, look, these owners are successful for a reason. I mean, I guess if you want to get rich, take some risks.
All right, Adam. Well, what do you say we move on to? We got a new welcome to the flock we're going to get to. And then, as I mentioned, we got dumped. We're going to get into that.
Okay.
That came in through a review. And then we got a couple emails here. So,
okay.
Let's get into it first with our welcome to the flock to Brandon Kane.
Oh, well, welcome, Brandon. Good to have you, man. Thanks
Solid
for
first name.
Thanks for heeding the call from last week.
And that's our welcome to the flock this week. But, we're going to continue on with our quest for 300. Not only do we have the Pete Carroll autographed mini helmet we plan on giving away, we're offering more shows throughout the season. For the $3 pledge, if you want to get in on our patron pick'em league, where we have prizes like, we have a Cliff Averill autographed mini helmet, we have a Steve Largent autographed jersey, we have a Kurt Warner autographed jersey. All these prizes for our Pick'em League, and that's only for our $3 a month subscribers and above. So you're going to want to get in on that. And it's a good time having the Pick'em League during the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the trash talk. I love the fun of it. And the prizes this year, stellar, dude. You did a good job with that.
This is going to be the best year that we've ever had for prizes.
Oh, easily. So we better have the best year for Pick'em participants too, which I think we're going to have big numbers this year.
Well, Pick'em participants, but we also want solid Pick'em team names too. So I'm looking forward to when the NFL opens up our Pick'em League and we can start naming our teams.
It's truly one of the small joys in my life to watch the creativity that you guys come up with these team names. I really do. Well, you've heard me throughout the season. I think it's fun.
Well, what's not fun is this latest review that we got in, but we read all of our reviews, and
Absolutely.
So we're gonna read this one. It is a 1-star, and it's an updated review from a listener who was on the fence back in the early offseason.
Okay,
I don't know if you recognize the username, Fatty Acid 23.
Maybe. Okay.
He says, "Nope, I'm done. I gave it a fair listen, longer than I should have, and I just can't keep listening. Adam clearly doesn't know half of what he says. I just can't listen to him stumble through a topic when he clearly doesn't know catfish about it. I don't mind his rants so much, but seriously, calm down. You're not Stephen A. or Skip. And please, you're not funny, period. I'll tell you what is a joke, your analysis. Maybe do some research before you spat nonsense. Hashtag not my Seahawks podcast. You guys should do better and stop begging people for money. It's just sad."
You know what I do appreciate? He gave it an honest try for a while.
He did.
And yeah.
And
the other,
you can tell that he was listening because he uses catfish. He uses do better. Yeah. And so he's got the nomenclature as part of the review.
Yeah. Well, here's one thing that I can say, Brandon. Anytime we've had let's face it, 3 1-star, like the very few people who
it's in the single digits.
Who give us a tough review. It's generally not of any fault of yours, Brandon. So I hope that you don't get too down about it, man. You seemed a little down about getting dumped. This does not. To me, look, man, I can't be everybody's cup of tea. If you don't, the hilarious part is that out of everything in there, the one thing, because of course he's not listening.
I don't know. He could be tuning in. He knows when this segment is. He could be tuning in, and he's probably listening to see what lame joke that we make because, clearly.
Well, the humor part, look, that doesn't offend me in any way, shape, or form. Everybody has different sense of humor.
Dad jokes aren't for everyone.
Well, there's that. And, on top of that, look, even you and I have different senses of humor a lot of times, too.
That's true.
Things that tickle our funny bones. So that I just don't take any offense to. But the idea that I don't know what I'm talking about and just stumble through topics. I may stumble with my words because I'm not Captain Eloquent, but I know what the catfish I'm talking about. And I'm generally right. And so if you disagree, you might check yourself in the mirror. And I hope you enjoy listening to other people on other podcasts that don't bring any energy and aren't excitable and actually bring some passion to a debate. No, I'm not Stephen A. No, I'm not Skip Bayless. I'm Adam Emmert, and I say what I want, and I say it with feeling. See you later, man. But thanks for I appreciate you as a 12. Thanks for the review. I promise you I won't be changing a thing.
I think the positive takeaway here is that we found out that neither of us are right for each other. You know, that's part of the breakup, right? You realize you're not for one another. Fatty Acid 23, he'll go on in life and find his or her skinny base 23. And we'll find a listener willing to start off thinking that we're a 2 and then change their mind to thinking that we're a 5.
Yeah, and the whole begging for money comment, like, whatever, man. It's value for value. We just ask you to chip in for the amount of effort that we do put in, because although maybe to you it doesn't sound like we put much time or research into it, we actually do. And this is hard to do. And you know what? Stumbling through topics in July, yeah, we do to a degree, because it's freaking July. It's the offseason. You started listening at the worst time of year.
It's true.
You kind of got the worst. This is the
if you
floor,
start
man.
listening in February and then decide it's not for you come July, he'll tune back in the regular season.
Right.
He'll come back.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I don't care if he does, but yeah. But anyways, we do read them both ways.
We do,
and I think that's a good and healthy thing to do.
And the other thing about begging for money, if we were really hard up for money, we could take ads from like sleazeball online sports books. I mean, the offer's been out there.
The offers have been out there, man. Yeah, I mean, we definitely could, But yeah, I mean, so sue me for wanting to make this more of a career than banging on steel plate with hammers, staring into a light box for 12 hours a day.
All right, Adam. Well, before we get into some of the email, some of the do better,
I may have sounded cantankerous back there.
A little bit cantankerous.
Yeah,
but
see, that's a joke he won't think is funny.
That's just living up to your MO.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's 2 things that I regret saying last week before we get into do better and our emails.
Okay, this feels like a mea culpa.
I know. Well, it's just, Fatty Acid got me thinking about some things. And, what do I say that I say in a previous week that I look back and I go, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Or maybe not, in that kind of way. And in this particular case, I was wrong, because Flocktimus Prime, Keith Ketover, he called us out. He called us out over the hot dog eating competition. And no, they do not eat 99-cent pack of hot dogs. It's the Nathan's hot dogs, which they're sponsoring the competition. And I don't even think we have the Nathan's hot dogs here in Montana. But Keith pointed out,
yeah, we do.
Do we? Okay.
Yeah.
I clearly am not as familiar.
Not a connoisseur.
I go to the Costco aisle, and they're not at Costco, I don't think.
Yeah,
maybe they are. Well, Keith pointed out they are $3.50 a pack. So we were not accurate last week in calling them 99-cent a pack hot dogs.
I said I like 99-cent pack of hot dogs.
Okay, I think we said that we thought that that's what they probably ate.
Oh, okay.
Were the cheapo hot dogs.
Good enough. I'm glad that Keith brought that to our attention, and I'm glad that you brought that up as a correction.
Yeah.
Because when we don't know what we're talking about, we make corrections.
Right. At least when somebody points it out to us.
Yeah.
We can't correct ourselves if people just go, oh, yeah, they're probably right.
Yeah.
Challenge us. Yeah. Come at me, bro, like Keith did.
Yeah. Facts, logic, and reason. We can't disagree with that.
Yeah. All right. Email. First one here. It's just a tweet from _12th Dan. Daniel Weinholtz, works for Buck Knives over there in Idaho, supplying knives for the show. Always generous of Daniel to do that. He says, which will be higher this season? The Seahawks win total by itself, or the rest of the NFC West combined?
Rest of the NFC West combined. I think you're going to see those 3 teams end up with 4 to 6 wins apiece.
Yeah.
And
I would think 14 wins for the rest of the division is probably a good over-under, right?
And I really feel this Hawks team's around 11 to 12 wins, which I think is good for a 1 seed. So
I could go 13.
Well,
I know my prediction, I went 15. But, if I take the homer glasses off, 13 wins.
That's taking them off, huh?
For me.
Okay.
That's doing kind of the Top Gun look over the top of the glasses. Maybe not taking them all the way off.
Right.
Here's one from Fernando, who we haven't heard from in a while Mexico. He says, "Hi, Brandon and Adam. First, I want to thank you for keeping the show running during these months, as it has provided me with all the Seahawks offseason information I badly needed. Also, wanted to share with you a couple of thoughts that came through my mind this offseason and led me to think we are ready for an outstanding year. Everybody is very concerned with the offense, and particularly with the O-line. You know, Fernando must know that I have a hard time saying the word particularly because he uses it here. I'm not. If you write an email to the show, leave out the word particularly. That's like my stumble word of all time.
Then you just need to swap in specifically every time.
Okay, there we go. And specifically with the O-line, which was absolutely terrible last year. But I honestly think that at the end, the issues we had the last 2 years were on the defense, which, if very good, was not the same as in the Super Bowl years. We know the Seahawks are built to be a team supported by the defense. The Seahawks have faced the best scoring offenses on each of the last 4 seasons during the playoffs. On the 2013 and 2014, we defeated Denver and Green Bay. In 2015 and 2016, we were beaten by Carolina and Atlanta, who scored a combined total of 67 points. And that won't take you to the Super Bowl. I believe that the biggest issue was that the team became too thin on the defense, specifically on the D-line. Remember, on the Super Bowl year, Bennett and Averill were backups. Isn't that crazy, Adam, to think back to Red Bryant and Chris Clemens, the defensive line starters in the Super Bowl? And I think if you look at like snap counts, Bennett and Averill were on the field more just because the Seahawks play more nickel. But Clemens and Bryant. Yeah.
Well, that just shows you how deep they were at D-line that year, man. It was insane.
It does kind of make you wonder, though, if we're going to be saying, a couple of years from now, the same thing about guys like Frank Clark and Malik McDowell.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a strong possibility for that. I mean, McDowell, we need to see a little more out of since we haven't seen anything yet.
Right.
But as far as Clark goes, I mean, that growth from year 1 to year 2 was phenomenal, and it only looks like the sky's the limit for him.
Well, Fernando continues on, says, "I trust this year we have a real shot, as all draft investment done in defense will give fruits. The contributions of Clark, Reed, Jefferson, Malik, and Nazir supporting the veterans will make the difference. This burst to the D-line will help a healthy LOB, which also has new blood, to regain the lost glory. Last year, the defensive backs had only 9 interceptions, while a few years ago, Sherman had 8 all by himself twice. On the other side of the ball, I have no doubt we will have a much improved offensive line. Not that I am draft pedigree obsessed, but last year our offensive tackles were 2 undrafted, converted basketball and tight end players and didn't work. This year, despite all the paper hype for Fant, there is an actual possibility that 2 former first rounders and, most important, full-time trained tackles might protect Russell. Moreover, the line could be built by 2 first-rounders, Afedi and Jokel, 2 second-rounders, Britt and Posick, and a 4th-rounder, Glow, all lifetime O-line players. How can this scenario be worse than the last year's? My only concern, special teams. Before free agency started, the only player I thought we really needed to keep was Hauschka. Then I expected we would draft a kicker, then get an undrafted free agent. Sorry, but I can't trust a heartbroken kicker, and Walsh is far beyond that. Now I'm waiting for kicker cuts from other rosters, and then the team will be ready to go. Finally, there are only 2 things left to say. Adam, yes, we are going to the Super Bowl. And go Hawks. Best regards from Mexico City, from Fernando.
Right on. Hey, thanks a lot, Fernando. I mean, I like his optimism when it comes to the offensive line. I mean, I know that I get up in arms about it a little bit, but we talked about it a while ago. I mean, there's a solid chance just to hit on a couple of those dudes, and it's got to be at least slightly better. I mean, we joked with Oscar, man, like the idea of being the 42nd, rated tackle. That sounds great. We could actually get there.
Yeah.
Over the 66th. So, but appreciate the email, man, and appreciate his optimism too. Going to the Super Bowl.
Solid long-form email for an off-season show. I like it.
Yes.
All right, Adam, what do you say we get into some do better and better life?
Sounds good, man. I'll start out do better this week.
All right.
the Arizona Cardinals have kind of been my whipping boy lately, and it ain't gonna stop because the sports hate flows through
it's
me.
Rivals
Brandon.
Month. Let's keep it going.
It does, and I'll tell you what, my do better this week is for gimmicky little stories about Bruce Arians. I am sick of reading headlines about stupid crap that Bruce Arians does. Who cares? Like I'm tired of it. Here are some of the gems that we've been treated to over the last couple weeks. Bruce Arians says he used to drink paint as a kid before playing football. That explains so much.
That was my favorite one. We needed to hear that.
Yeah. He drank paint before games as a kid to try to get an advantage. It must have been lead paint for him to still believe in Carson Palmer being a viable quarterback in this league. So that's one of the little quaint headlines. Another one recently, Bruce Arians runs bar out of his trunk after home games. A whole article about how when he was a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff, he would have a whole trunk of booze there for everybody, whether it was Crown Royal or some beer or, whatever, man. Like he just mixed drinks out in the parking lot. It's like, it's good for camaraderie. Another article that was brought up was 10 things you probably don't know about Bruce Arians, and cool little stories about how when he tended bar, he had a gun stuck in his belly, and stories about how Peyton Manning can't use a can opener, and all sorts of just real gems. I'm sick of this stuff, man. Why is everybody so desperate to try to make Bruce Arians sound cool? Like, do you hear this kind of garbage about Pete Carroll, and everybody makes fun of him about being the cool, laid-back, neat coach? Like this, all of this screams try hard, and the writers need to find something real to write about. Like, what's Honey Badger's progress coming back from his injury? I'd like to know something like that. So to all these stupid headlines and the Arizona Cardinals writers, do better.
I don't know. That's some pretty good. That's good off-season material right there.
Drinks paint.
Arians drinking paint. I needed to see that. That made me smile when I saw that earlier.
That made you smile?
It did.
That made smoke come out of my ears a little bit. I was like, what's the next one going to be, Brandon? Bruce Arians has a pet seal. And he's named him Palmer. And the vet bills are astronomical because it's always hurt. What's the next quirky story about Bruce Arians that's going to come out?
Well, that would probably make me smile too. Just like it. Another story that made me smile was seeing that for Russell Wilson and Ciara's 1-year anniversary, it was Ciara, not Russell Wilson, that had an airplane fly a little banner that said happy, 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
When I clicked on that, I expected to see, here's another one of Russell Wilson's ideas. No, this was Ciara's. And the reason why it made me smile is I know these two are made for each other then.
Yeah, man. They're equally as mushy.
Yeah.
And they're willing to put it out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, if it works, if they both, kind of go at that level, then, good for them. Boy, that would make me remarkably uncomfortable in a relationship if somebody did that.
Oh, well, for sure.
We keep that on the DL. Like all that, Well, it's kind of like when I drop my daughter off from school. I don't tell her I love you.
Right.
I tell her I don't like you.
But it's the subtext is there.
Right. Exactly. But that way, we don't have to say that crap in public. So yeah,
I understand.
We're just different. We're birds of different feathers. That's
I know. But yeah. I remember back to our conversations with TD. When he'd come on and, especially early on in the relationship with Russell Wilson and Ciara and going, I'm really kind of worried that maybe Russell's coming on a little too strong. And now I've realized the two, they're very similar.
Yeah, no, it worked out. Whatever Russ did, he nailed it.
I know.
So good job, man.
All right. My do better this week is for all those articles that we had to put up throughout the offseason saying the Seahawks window was closing.
Yes.
Adam. And now we have some pretty substantial statistical evidence that no, in fact, the Seahawks window is not closing because ESPN Insider, they put all their minds together into a single room, came up with some data points and put it all together, crunched the numbers, and guess where the Seahawks come out in terms of future power rankings?
I don't know. Where do they say it? Because if you ask me, because this is where I'm not going to take off my Homer glasses.
Yeah.
They were number one forever.
Number one, it comes out to the New England Patriots, and I think a lot of that has to do with Bill Belichick being the head coach. I think they should, and you have a viable backup, it seems like, with Jimmy Garoppolo, just in case Brady goes down. We'll see what he won some games for him when Brady was out last year. So I can see the future being bright for New England. It's okay that they're number one, but look, number two, the Seattle Seahawks. So
yes,
the idea that their window's closing when they have the number two coach in the league by most people's opinion. Mm-hmm. They have Russell Wilson, a guy that was number
top five, top five coach, top five QB,
and
one of the best defenses, all in their prime,
right? And a defensive line that looks like they're getting better. And guys are under contract for this year. And, you have a competent GM that's able to structure it. So it looks like we can continue to have a team that
deep, young, wide receiving core
that stays competitive throughout the upcoming seasons. Because this isn't just a power ranking for 2017. No, they're looking at this as projecting out down the road, as these are the franchises that have the best chances to stay at top teams as you go down the road. And so for the Seahawks to be number two, it just goes to show you all those articles that we knocked on throughout the offseason about the Seahawks having their window closing, that, they're suddenly going to not be a playoff team anymore. Well, we've heard from two out of our three rivals already this year that we're pretty much a lock to win the division. So for all of you writers out there writing that stuff, do better.
You bet. Do better, man. I agree. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's funny when you put a little facts, logic, and reason to this team and you really break it down. Yeah, the future is awful bright. There's no doubt about that.
It makes sense.
You bet. Well, speaking of the future, my better at life than Skip Bayless this week is probably somebody that here in about 6-7 years in the future, you might see on a Seattle Seahawks draft board, because this individual has displayed some real grit. And we know about how the Seahawks really love players with grit. My better at life than Skip Bayless this week, Brandon, is for QB Trayson Borgett. And Trayson Borgett played in a flag football tournament, a 7-on-7 tournament as a quarterback for the Tucson Turf. And he led them all the way to the championship and won the title despite not having any 4 or 5 star recruits on their roster. And he did it all, Brandon, on 2 broken feet.
What?
He had both feet in walking casts, and he lit the 7-on-7 league on fire and won the title. And he said he did it because the game is everything. I love this game. I love playing it with all my family and friends. It's just amazing. The feeling you get, ain't nothing can stop me from that. He'd broken his foot randomly at school earlier in the year, goofing off, broke the other foot right before the end of the summer or end of the school year. And he goes into this 7-on-7 tournament, straps on the walking cast, and proceeds to dominate. Trayson Borgett, future Seahawk, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I like it, man. Talk about grit. It's one thing, just taping up your feet, but actually going out in walking casts.
Yeah, 13 years old, have that kind of gumption.
That's awesome.
I like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's somebody who loves the game already.
You betcha.
All right. Well, speaking of grit, well, first, before I get to my better at life, I did mention that there were 2 things that I regretted saying from last show.
Oh, yeah. You only got to one.
I only got to one. So last week, you and we kind of made some cynical comments about change.org and how change never seems to happen. Well,
that was maybe a jerky statement. Yeah,
it was a jerky statement. We were just being cynical jerks.
Yeah.
But so a couple days later, I'm listening to Finding Mastery, and it's a podcast by Michael Gervais, who is a sports psychologist for the Seahawks. And that's why, speaking of grit, that ties in with my better at life. And Michael Gervais has on not just the guy who was the co-inventor of Siri. Adam Chire is the guy's name. Not only did he invent Siri, he also developed the website change.org.
No way.
So I'm listening to the episode. It was a great show, and there are a couple, big takeaways that I had from the show. I don't need to get into all of it, but the thing that stuck with me and that has kind of turned into a bit of a theme for the show was artificial intelligence. And so here's someone who is very much into artificial intelligence and talks about how we have computer programs that can be, better than the most exceptional humans, right? You have these chess playing robots that can beat any human chess player, and you have the computers that are better than humans at Texas Hold'em. They can do all the calculations better than any person.
Yeah.
But the reason why Adam Chire is my better at life is that he says, despite all that AI having, these amazing accomplishments to defeat humans in these certain games, despite that level of intelligence, they're nowhere near the kind of intelligence that humans have at about 2 years old.
Oh.
He says an AI system that is the best at any of those things, like I mentioned, chess or poker, it can't take that knowledge and put it into practical use somewhere else. A chess program can't take what it knows about chess and then start playing checkers and be able to figure out, how to beat a human at checkers. It just, it doesn't have that capability.
Does not compute.
Right. So my takeaway from this is that maybe Skynet doesn't happen in our lifetime. So for giving me comfort and also developing some things that have positively impacted hundreds of millions of people like Siri or Change.org, Adam Chire, better at life than Skip Bayless.
I'm not sure Siri has, bettered my life. Like,
well, not yours, but
she's put me in an Idaho desert by getting the directions wrong. Like, she can't find a Starbucks in all of Utah. She talks smack. She's lippy.
You don't like that?
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
It impacts you positively in maybe a minor way.
Yeah, maybe in a minor way. But
I can ask my Echo to tell me a joke, and she tells me a joke, and it's a good time.
Dude, maybe we should enlist her.
Clearly our jokes aren't that great.
Right. I am a little more optimistic, like you said, about Skynet not taking over. But then again, when you said that they're smarter than, they're about the same level as a 2-year-old, and that's about where you get, that's still more than I got.
Oh no, he's saying that they're nowhere near that. A 2-year-old can actually, learn from something.
2-year-olds even smarter than they are.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Okay, I do feel optimistic now. I was like, man, 2-year-old's a high bar. I don't know that I can pass that.
It's okay. Nowhere near the 2-year-old.
Okay.
So even though a 2-year-old couldn't beat you at chess, but it just doesn't, like his point was it doesn't have that capability of learning. And there's no remember the thing about Skynet, it was Skynet becoming self-aware, and these computers are nowhere near becoming self-aware yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Well, no, not in our lifetime is what I'm saying.
Cool. That sounds good.
That's good.
All right, man. On that positive note, Brandon, we got it through. Another one in July.
We will not be taken over by Skynet in our lifetime. That's a takeaway that you can carry on through the next couple of weeks until the season starts.
Yes, and Russell Wilson should be ranked above Andrew Luck if you're starting a franchise. Those are the two things you really need to take away from this
Those are really
episode.
the two things you need to take away.
Yeah.
And with that,
I think there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.